Hello, hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us again today. Welcome, welcome to another episode on Your Voice, Your Impact. This is the energetic EJ. And yes, we're diving right into it because we have a little bit of, movement in the plan. But because we are always like, we always have a plan B, a plan C, and D and E, we just have to improvise and still do what we've committed to doing. So thank you and welcome to this episode of Voice Your Impact. I'm the energetic EJ, and of course, you can see on the screen already, I have my guest ready, set to go. My guest today is Greg Barnsdale, all the way from the US. He has quite an interesting bio and an interesting story, and even a more interesting topic and a message to share with the world. Today, we're talking about do not think about the end of your life. Do not play around your mortality. Do not go against it. Do not what's that word now? Do not ignore it. Do not ignore your mortality, knowing that you are mortal. We are mortal, right? And our time here on earth is numbered. And as much as it feels uncomfortable to talk about these things, well, I don't even know. I think it's different for everyone and for people from different parts of the world. But from where I'm from in Africa, Nigeria to be specific, you don't want to be talking about death just anyhow. Like, don't say that. Don't talk about that. Don't think about it. Like, but we all know that it is inevitable. Nobody's going to leave this world alive. Nobody's going to transition out of this realm alive. We're all going to have to go through the doorway of death. So, why should we be scared of talking about it? Well, maybe the fear is valid, but here is someone today who has a message for you. Like, yes, it might be scary, but it is worth thinking about. And not just thinking about it, but actually planning for it. And I'm super interested to know, what that will look like from his perspective, and seeing how we can add that to our own perspective to prepare for this inevitable day that we all are going to go through anyways. But what time is what we don't know. But planning ahead of it might actually make it easier, or make the time we have here now even more worthwhile. Well, we're going to find out all about that when we start to talk to my guest today. So my guest today is Greg Barnsdale. How are you, Greg? How are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you, Gerald. Thank you for having me on your show. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you for coming and thank you for reaching out to share your story. I want you to take us on a quick journey to telling us about who you are and why is this topic. I mean, you've written a book about it, and you've also, you feel like you've been mandated to share the story with the world. So can you take us through a journey of who you are and why this particular topic is important to you at this time?
Yes. Well, I think my message is somewhat unique. Here where I live in Ontario, Canada, we do talk about death perhaps a little more than in other parts of the world. But this whole message of being open with what we want to have happen when we ultimately pass away, or if we happen to become incapable and cannot make decisions for ourselves, it's important that our family and those closest to us know what we want to have happen. I've worked as a funeral director. I've been a licensed funeral director for the past 40 years, actually. And I've also worked as a certified financial planner. I'm a certified executor advisor. I'm a volunteer with a local hospice organization. And many of my work roles have, in one way or another, been in end of life type of roles. I've also worked as a life insurance specialist too. So I've seen a lot of different things that many people have not. But one of the most prevalent things that I have seen is that if we are more proactive by speaking with our family members about what we want, it can make it so much easier for them.
I kind of lost your audio in that part where you say if we are more pro. What was that you said?
Okay, I'll just repeat my message here or summarize it, 𝐿𝐺𝐻. I've worked in all kinds of different end-of-life roles. I'm a licensed funeral director. I've worked for large and small funeral homes. I'm a certified financial planner. I've worked as a life insurance specialist. I'm a certified executor advisor. And I've worked in many different roles pertaining to end-of-life issues. I'm also a hospice volunteer with a local hospice here in Ontario, Canada, too. So I'm not saying this to impress anyone. I'm saying this to impress upon people that I've seen a lot of different things, but one of the most major things that I've learned over my entire career of working in these various roles is that if our family members know what we want to have happen, it makes it so much easier for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. So thank you very much for giving us just an overview of what you do and your message and why it is important for you to share that message at this time. What have you found in your journey of working with end of life people and all the things that you just mentioned and highlighted that you do? What have you found to be, I mean, now you said in your own client, it's easier for people to talk about these things. So that means that there are still a few people who don't find it very easy to talk about it, correct? What have you found has been that thing that makes it uncomfortable to talk about your end of life or to even plan ahead of it?
Well, I think we all have a fear of death, but I don't want to die. I don't want to become incapacitated and bound to a hospital bed and in a wheelchair and not being able to make decisions for myself. But if our family knows what we want to have happen, it gives them some clarity. It gives them some direction. And I've seen in so many cases, 𝐿𝐺𝐻, where people pass away and the family has no idea what the deceased wanted. They didn't know that the deceased wanted to be cremated, or perhaps they wanted to be buried, or maybe they wanted their ashes buried, or something special done with them, or they wanted something special done at their funeral. But if we are open to embrace these types of conversations and communicate these thoughts with them, as I said, it does give them some clarity and direction at that time. And that's why I wrote this book. I've tried many different things to share my message with as many people as I can about the importance of it. And many things did not work, but this book is starting to gain some traction, and it's inspiring people to do just that.
Right, fantastic. So when you say that, at what point would you say it's best to start to have this conversation? Is there a sweet spot in the age of, because again, none of us know for sure, like, okay, maybe probably I'm going to transition when I'm 80. So when I'm 60, I can start talking about, is there a sweet spot when it comes to the age when these conversations start to happen with family and friends? Yeah.
When we are younger, we feel invincible, that nothing is going to happen to us. I felt that way much of my youth. But working in the funeral business, it made me realize, 𝐿𝐺𝐻, that how delicate life is. And when you
Right.
ask, is there a sweet spot when we can start having these types of conversations? No, I don't think there is a sweet spot. But when the opportunity comes up, when we hear of other friends and family members who have passed away or who have been hospitalized with some sort of serious illness or an accident, those are the types of times when we can talk to our family members, perhaps maybe a little more easily, to say, this is what I would like, or this is what I would
Mm-hmm.
not like. Those types of things.
Right. Right, right. In your own journey, part of your bio talks about, how you were also diagnosed at some point, and I mean, you probably started to have that conversation. How has having this conversation with your loved ones, how um, has it in any way affected the way that you are having to deal with, the diagnosis and dealing with whatever you are currently having to face health wise?
Yes. Well, when I was young getting into the funeral business, and I was always talking to my parents, as an example, my aging parents, about what they would want, and I helped them plan for that. And fortunately I did, because about 4 years ago my 82-year-old mother died quite suddenly, but we knew exactly what she wanted. But to your point about what happened to me just recently, yes, it shocked me very much, because over much of my career I was stressing to so many people about the importance of them having their affairs in order, having a current and valid will here in our country and many other countries around the world is vitally important, because it's the document that specifies who is to wrap up our life when we die.
Right.
Having a medical directive or power of attorney, those things are very important too. But what made me realize uh, the ironic nature of this was 2 months after I published this book about the importance of planning, I was
Mm,
diagnosed with a large brain tumor.
mm, mm. And how I mean that there is no ease with any sort of diagnosis. It doesn't even matter the size of it, the magnitude of it, the what's the terminal effect of it, right? Is going to always be hard. So when you got that diagnosis, how has having the conversation with your family helped you through the journey so far?
Well, it gave me a big relief knowing that my affairs were in order.
Mm.
Fortunately, Jiro, this brain tumor that I had in my head was non-cancerous. So
Oh.
almost a year ago, it was removed, or most of it was removed. They couldn't get all of it out. There's still some there, but apparently the amount that is still there is not growing. I've been getting regular MRIs and such to keep an eye on it. And I
Right.
feel great. I'm exercising and looking after my health, and I feel incredibly lucky. But when I was diagnosed with that brain tumor, my wife was she was beside herself. She was so upset. And
Mm.
ironically, I put a small video on TikTok about that, and it was viewed over 1.7 million times, actually.
Wow. 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 So tell me, Greg, how do you balance being an author, undertaker, financial planner, and all of these wonderful things that you do?
Well, my full-time role right now is focusing on creating demand for this book by getting the word out there about how important it is, Ejiro, for people to lean into this type of thing. And I know different cultures have different expectations,
Approach?
etc.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I respect that. But here in North America, in Canada and the US and many other parts of the world, from other people that I've spoke to and what I've seen in my travels around the world too, is that more and more people are open to talking about their mortality and planning properly to make sure
Mm.
that it's ultimately easier for their family.
Right, right. Can you walk us through a typical example of what a plan would look like? That's a end of life plan. What would it look like if somebody is watching this and they're like, "Oh, I haven't thought about this before." Okay, so what would a plan look like, and how would that conversation start? Because again, I'm just kind of thinking if if my mom calls us up now as kids and say, children, come together. So let's talk about when I die. Everybody will be like, wait, what happened? Like, are you sick? Is something? So the two in one question is, how does a plan look like, and how do you even start that conversation with your loved ones? Just give us an example.
Okay. Well, I'll refer to my book, Do Not Ignore Your Mortality, Practical Advice from a Funeral and Financial Insider, that you can see here on the screen. That's a small version of
Yes.
it. The very first chapter is entitled Communication, because it all starts with communicating with our loved ones about what we want. So
Mm,
a plan has to start with that communication. This, then the chapters kind of follow through about the different options that are available and so on. But a plan here in North America would typically include a funeral pre-arrangement, a
mm,
document indicating what someone wants, and it doesn't. People don't have to go to a funeral provider to do that if they've, at a minimum, spoke to their family about what they want to have happen. But one of the most important documents here in North America and many other countries is having a current and valid will in place.
will.
And I would imagine where you're from as well, 𝐿𝐺𝐻, you hear, I'm sure, about the importance of having a will in place.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, that sounds great. That sounds great. So, guys, if you're watching on LinkedIn, I can see a couple of people watching from LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us. So, if I'm looking this way, it's because I'm trying to monitor it from my other device because I can't see the numbers on here. So, if you're watching this and you have a question for Greg, please drop it in the comment section so Greg can take a shot at it. Thank you so much, Mr. Mohammed Shamim, for joining the conversation. I am grateful for you being here. Okay, so Greg, let's come back to the topic of this. I want you to speak to young people. And like we said earlier on, you mentioned when we're younger, we feel invisible. Like, okay, I'm young, nothing can happen and everything. But because beyond just planning, I believe beyond just planning for that time when it comes, is also looking at how can I maximize the now before the then, right? So I want you to speak to a young person watching this right now. What would you say to them in regards to this, in regards to preparing ahead of time for when they transition?
One of the most important things that I have found, especially when I worked as a financial advisor here in Canada, was that a lot of younger people, young parents, as an example, who have had children and are working hard to raise them, etc.
Right.
Quite often they get busy with their own lives, and they don't necessarily consider as seriously the risks that could happen in their lives. One example is the risk of premature death, and the that risk of a parent or both parents all of a sudden passing away uh, through sickness or an accident or something, and leaving those young children vulnerable without the family knowing what they would want to have happen and who was to raise them, and where the money's going to come from to raise those children, is a major factor. And engaging a good financial advisor to help with those discussions is crucially important.
So what would a typical financial advisor say first to somebody who wants to plan? What would you say to somebody who wants to plan as a financial advisor?
One of the first helpful questions, 𝐿𝐺𝐻, is to have an open discussion about what the goals and objectives are of the clients. And everybody's goals and objectives are so different, right?
Different. Yes.
That's right. So it's anyone's financial plan, or even anyone's funeral that they ultimately want, or what they want to have happen if they're bound to a hospital bed for the rest of their life in some sort of facility. It all has to come down to what their goals and objectives are in life, and that's what all of this planning must start from.
Right. Okay. As we wrap up this session, please tell us a little bit more about the book. Um, uh, where can people get access to it? Why should people get this book? Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. This book is it took me a long time to write this, because I was challenged with writing a good, compelling book that people would actually read about a topic that many people are still uncomfortable with. But I used the advice of a dragon. I'm sure you've probably heard of Shark Tank from the US. It's
Yes.
a very popular television show. Well, the
Yes.
Canadian version of that is called Dragon's Den, and I have leveraged the assistance of a very popular dragon who was one of the most popular nonfiction authors here in Canada, and still is very popular. So I've written this short, compelling book, and it's my publisher, Friesen Press, has actually nominated it recently as a bestseller twice in the last while.
Yay! Congratulations.
So it's coming. It's starting to get some momentum, but
Traction. Yeah.
it's a short conversation starter that gives people an idea, 𝐿𝐺𝐻, about what they should be thinking of. It talks to people about the options available and who they can help, um, who can help them, whether it's from the legal field or the financial or the funeral industry. And I've also intentionally addressed how there are quite a number of online services available now today too.
Oh, okay. So that means, does that mean if you say online services, does that mean you can work with people outside of your region for this?
Yes, you can. You can learn from people from all over the world about all of these different things, but the planning needs to be in harmony with the rules and regulations of typically of the
Sure.
jurisdiction of where we live.
Oh, okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Greg. I love the passion with which you want to share this message. At least, given your own experience in the work that you've done with working with people in that regard who are almost transitioning out of this realm, and even your own personal experience and going with that urgency to put this work together so that more people can learn how to be comfortable with talking about these things and actually preparing and make it. And I think it's very, very important, because when you say that now, I wish that I knew this. I wish I met you, maybe let's say 10 years ago, so that I could have an idea. I think I had it, but I couldn't articulate it, right? So I couldn't even have that conversation with my dad. And it's sad because I really, really still feel pain in that. I feel like if I was closer, like if I was in the same geographical location with him before his passing, I feel like there's a lot he would have loved to say to me personally, as because I'm his first child, and I know how much he did love me. Because I'm like, he called me the womb opener. It took them a long time for them to have a child, and so I was the one that came first, and so he really, really cherished me. But I wasn't around, during his passing. And I remember the last conversation I had with him was over the phone, when he called to say, when he told the people in the hospital to call me so that I could pray with him over the phone. So I really wish that I was in the room with him, because I feel like he would have told me a lot of things. But good enough, or good thing is, in a way, I didn't have the capacity at the time to, or would I say the courage, to really have the deep conversation to say, okay, what exactly would you want? But I kind of had it in passive, like, okay, we're not praying for this, right? We're not praying that anything happens to you, but if it does, or when it does, what would you want? How would you want us to handle things? And I'm glad that in a way he was able to say, oh, if this does happen, I would prefer that you do this, and I would like that you do this, right? And even though we didn't go into much detail, but that little conversation actually helped us when it eventually happened, and we had some sort of contradiction or opposition from the family. We were able to say, nope, this is what our dad says, this is how he said we should, and it helped. And so that is just to kind of buttress the fact that he said, when you plan ahead, it actually helps, especially with the people you're leaving behind, whether that is a family, a business, properties. Everybody would know, okay, how to apportion it, what to do with it, who to talk to, where to go, the first thing to do. And I think the more detailed it is, the better it becomes for the people you're leaving behind. So that it's not like, they're just like, oh my God, this has happened. I mean, the shock of you leaving is there, but also the shock of, what are we going to do next? This has happened. What are we supposed to do next, right? That one is also something, and that shock can be dealt with if you just go through that initial discomfort, to have that conversation with your loved ones to say, when this does happen, then this is how I want to be treated. This is how I want you to take. This is where I want you to take me. This is what I want you to do. And it just makes life a little bit more easier. Thank you so much for really bringing that up. I think, yes, I think I should start having that conversation with my family. Would you have any final words for anyone watching or listening right now before we say goodbyes today?
Yes. I'm sorry to hear about your father, Ajiro, but you did the right things in speaking with him as you did. And I totally understand that these conversations are difficult to have. But that's why I've stressed in my book that the importance is really just to get thinking about what one wants and to lean into it. But people can find my book on my website, do not ignore your mortality.com. It's available in various versions, paperback version, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook. I narrated it myself. and it's available on all the major platforms, including Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and you'll see on my website there's various places that you'll be able to find it and buy it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you, Susanna. Thank you for joining. Thank you for leaving a comment. We appreciate you for being here. All right. Thank you so much, Greg. You've been amazing. And
Thank you.
thank you for spreading the word and for creating more awareness about these things, that it is not it is not something to be feared, but something to be planned for. And I think it's really helpful that you keep sharing that message. And I'm glad we're able to play a tiny role in helping spread that word across. So keep spreading the word, keep being amazing, and I wish you all the very best on your journey. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Okay, guys. Yes, this is where we draw the curtain today. Yes, my co-host was unable to make it today. She has a meeting and she's unavoidably absent, but we'll be back again next week, Monday, with another amazing conversation talking about your voice, your impact. You can see here, like nothing is too small or nothing is too big for you to talk about once you're convinced and convicted that this message, the world needs to hear it. You can take Greg for an example. I mean, this is not a topic that you just wake up to, but he is committed to spreading this word and creating awareness about this. And I think you also have that kind of message that you like to share. Okay. So, and if you do, reach out to us to be a part of the show so you can share your voice and make that impact that your voice was meant for. Until we come here again next week, this is the Energetic AJ. This is your voice, your impact, and I'll see you next week. Bye bye. Bye, guys. Take care. Bye.